pleasant night, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known in this realm as Jaime in Fuego, and if it please you, join me for the 4th installment of our palaver all about the 40th anniversary of Night Shift here on Hail to Stephen King. Once again, gracias and thank you so much for joining me. This being the 4th installment, I hope that some of you have in fact been rereading these stories along with me. I've read every single Stephen King story as of last September upon finishing Gwendy's Button Box and Sleeping Beauties, but what a journey it was. Took me over 7 years, and it's been very fun now that I have read everything, going back and rereading other things for anniversaries and just rediscovering certain things, most notably the immense amount of wonderful stories. Definitely some of King's most noteworthy are here in Night Shift, and we've been tackling them 4 per episode as opposed to doing a ginormo-sized episode. I was like, you know what? Let's just go 4 at a time, give each story its proper attention, for better or for worse, because there are stories in here that are better than others. So after everything that we have covered so far, including favorites like Jerusalem's Lot, I Am the Doorway, The Mangler and the Boogeyman, Gray Matter, Sometimes They Come Back, lots of good stuff so far, but we are nearing the home stretch here. There's only 1 episode after today, but let's get right to the first one, which has a very odd history. Our first story today is The Lawnmower Man! And The Lawnmower Man, you see, the funny thing is the Lawnmower Man short story has donuts to do with the film that everybody saw that had Pierce Brosnan in it. And it even had like the Stephen King name on there, despite the fact that the script, the only similarity was the fact that it used the same title. I don't know how they worked that out. I would imagine King made some money off of that, and it's just like, yeah, whatever, you know, but long story short, I actually quite like the first Lawnmower Man, Job's War, or Beyond Cyberspace, or whatever the hell the proper subtitle is, because I've seen both used for the sequel. The sequel is, it's a turd, a very big, wet, smelly one. But I actually, for what it's worth, enjoyed the Lawnmower Man film. I stole a few quotes here and there for some songs that I've worked on with various bands I've had over the years. But if we're going to talk the very short story that is Lawnmower Man, it's essentially about this dude who loves his Red Sox, see a similarity there, loves chilling and listening to the games on the radio and drinking his beer, see a similarity there, and he finds out that his regular, mowing kid has gone off to college, and he's like, what, this kid's going to college? And so he has to go and consult a professional groundskeeping company, and they send out this big burly brother who has a, without spoiling anything, very strange way of going about cutting the grass. And I can't spoil for you what it is, and there's really not much else that I can say beyond that. This story's like 7 pages. One interesting thing that I do have, which I'm looking for it on my shelf ski here. Oh, it is below that, I believe. Sorry for the delay, peeps. I know I have it here somewhere. Yes. So this was actually very interestingly adapted for the Bizarre Adventures, which was a kind of more adult Marvel imprint. I'm dropping books here. But essentially, they took the source text for The Lawnmower Man, and they made it into a graphic adaptation. And I think it works a lot better as a graphic adaptation than it does as a 7-page short story. The short story is just kind of and then it's over with. But when you see a graphic representation of this weird dude, very weird dude, who comes to mow this older, kind of schmucky gentleman's lawn, it just works a whole lot better. And I even recommend people seek out, there is a Dollar Baby that was done in the 80s, and it's actually, it's an accurate representation of the story, I guess. So, yeah, definitely seek that out. I just watched it just yesterday on YouTube, and, it's, for a student film, it's pretty good. Yeah, it honestly is, and it gets the point of the story across very well, albeit with one effect that I didn't look kind of cheese. But aside from that, not bad performances, and it gets the impression across of this very weird little short story. But I'm going to be honest, guys, this is definitely one of the weakest ones in the collection for me, and it's probably one of my least favorite Stephen King shorts, at least in this collection, if not ever. It's not bad, it's just short and weird, and I don't know, not particularly memorable aside for one aspect that I cannot spoil. So, but let's get to the next story, which has a little bit more, I guess, meat to chew on, or grass to chew on in the previous story's case, but this is Quitters Incorporated. Quitters Incorporated is about this guy who is a chain smoker. He's overworking, he's overeating, he's very obviously in terrible health, and there is a part of him that does legitimately want to quit smoking, even if he has second thoughts about it, even as he's making the decision. I think as a smoker myself for many years, I know very well how tough it is to kick a habit like that. I mean, people say that they even give a statistic in the story when he goes to this organization called Quitters Inc., Quitters Incorporated, where he goes to seek out some help after a friend he randomly runs into recommends them in New York City. But relapse rates are higher than heroin users for cigarette smokers. Yeah, it's like in the 80 percentile. It's crazy. And that's because nicotine is such a physically addictive thing, believe me, I know. And so I was like, I wasn't quite the automatic man, like the Bad Religion song, you know, where he's like, he smokes 3 packs a day and all that, but I was like around 2 in my early 20s. This is disgusting, y'all. Yeah. What was the ad campaign? Tumor causing tea stains, belly puking habit. At least here in the United States for a while. But yeah, you know, obviously smoking terrible for your health and whatnot. But you know, some people enjoy the occasional cigarette. I've heard that King still occasionally, very occasionally, will have a smoke from time to time. I don't know if that's true, and I'm not being judgmental. But yeah, it's definitely not good for you. But how many things do we indulge in, vice-wise, that are bad for our health? I mean, overeating, over drinking, you know, not sleeping enough, just all these different things. But yeah. In any event, this guy goes to Quitters Inc., and he finds out very quickly that they use some, without spoiling anything, unorthodox tactics to get you to quit smoking. It ties in with your family, and they basically kind of overstep some boundaries a little bit as far as monitoring you to make sure that you're not smoking. And I actually, you know, when I read this originally when I was much younger, I didn't like this story very much. I still can't say that I love it, but a reread allowed me to find a lot more merit in it and a lot more interest in it, especially as, you know, somebody who has struggled with, you know, just the addictions of nicotine and things like that, and having done, you know, the vapes and the, you know, robo pens and, you know, robo cigarettes and all that different shizzle. But, you know, they adapted this in an okay fashion for the Cat's Eye. And the Cat's Eye, if you guys remember from the last episode, also has the ledge in it, which is another one of these very grounded, non-supernatural stories that, you know, King would sometimes throw out to magazines other than, you know, Cavalier or, you know, or just the unpublished ones that show up in this collection. I think the ledge was done a lot better. You know, this was not done poorly in the Cat's Eye, with the exception of one particular scene. So James Woods portrays this guy who is trying to, you know, quit smoking, and James Woods has that interesting, he's always had that neuroticness a little bit about him, which I think fits this character very, very well. So his portrayal was good, and, you know, I felt like just the representation of the organization was pretty spot on as well. But the thing that really killed this segment to me is there is a scene in the very middle where he's being tempted to smoke, okay? And everybody at this cocktail party that he's at, it's like a huge gala, so it's everybody's smoking. Everybody is smoking, and they've got cigars, they've got cigarettes, you know, they're lighting each other up and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, that's well and good. There's a cover of the Police, I'll Be Watching You, or whatever, Every Breath You Take. And I know they're taking the song totally out of context, you know, or at least putting it in a new context with, you know, every step you take, every move you make, we'll be watching you, and so on. But they have human cigarette boxes come and start dancing around at one point. And this little musical interlude kind of thing pretty much kills the seriousness. And I know they were going for more of a black comedy aspect with this sequence, but this sequence is so dumb, it just killed the seriousness of the rest of the segment for me. So for that reason, I do not recommend the segment in the Cat's Eye. Sorry guys, I don't. If you want to laugh, I guess. But I just feel like it takes away the seriousness of, you know, just the stuff that we see at other points in the story. But I do recommend Quitters Inc. It's solid, and it's one that upon a reread here, I gained more of an appreciation for. It's definitely more of an adult story, though, as far as if you're going to enjoy it. I don't necessarily think like the average teenager is going to read Quitters Inc. and like it that much, but it's interesting because there's also a Tales from the Dark Side episode that doesn't have like the exact same thing, but it explores the experiences of a guy going through a very similar thing and consulting a company that also does unorthodox but different tactics. So I actually really recommend that episode of Tales from the Dark Side. I cannot remember what the hell it's called offhand. I should have double checked before I started reading this or started doing this video. But so that's Quitters Inc. for you guys. So we're jumping now to the third story. And the third story is called I Know What You Need. Yeah. Creepy title, right? And this is another one of those stories that you can tell, even though he didn't write it during, or maybe he did and it was just unpublished. I'm actually uncertain about that. This was a story that I don't believe was actually published until this particular collection. I'm pretty sure about that. But you can tell it kind of has those vibes of when King was in college, because it's essentially about this girl in college who encounters this guy named Ed, and Ed is definitely a little on the weird side, the obsessive, slightly eccentric side, but he's sweet in that creepy sort of way. And she has a boyfriend at the time though, but he helps her out with some information about like a big exam that she's going to take, and he's got mismatched socks, and he's just strange and stuff, but she finds a strange sweetness within him. And so some stuff happens with her boyfriend and she gets involved with Ed, and yet it's funny because you can tell that there's definitely going to be a creepy turn about Ed, and once again I can't spoil anything, but you definitely feel sorry for the guy a little bit, especially when you realize just what is kind of special about Ed, what makes him weird, without spoiling anything. It's not a supremely scary story or anything like that, and the dynamic between the two of them, it's I don't know, it's a story that I felt just had a lot of melancholy up until maybe at the climax, when some dots are kind of just, I don't know, kind of synced up and whatnot. But it's just it's kind of a story of a little bit of just sadness and despair in some ways, but also about just the unhealthiness of obsession, and maybe if you know somebody really, really well, how it can be kind of a good thing and a bad thing, because he knows what she needs. He's good at, he has a lot of intuition with regards to just this girl's quirks, and he's good at reading her, basically. And so it's a story that I honestly did not really remember this story at all. It was not one that when I first read Night Shift stuck out to me. Whereas I looked at all of these titles pretty much when I was about to reread this, and I'm like, remember that, remember that, remember that, remember that, remember that. That one I kind of remember, but this was the one that was pretty much just the dead zone in my brain, to make another King reference. I didn't remember this story at all. And so it was actually interesting rediscovering it, and it's not of the real supernatural variety either. So it's not a spook fest, let's put it that way. So I actually recommend I Know What You Need. Once again, don't go in expecting a fright fest or anything like that, but it's a good story. It's a solid entry. Well, not one of my favorites in this, but it's not in my top 10 or anything, but it's a solid entry here. Now, obviously, the one that's going to take up the most time is the fourth one here. The fourth one is Children of the Corn. And Children of the Corn, for my money, is, people talk about The Shining, obviously. They talk about Pet Sematary, obviously. They talk about Pennywise. But at least as far as lasting influence in popular culture, especially if we're going to talk about the amount of adaptations and sequels and all this other stuff, I think Children of the Corn is easily up there as maybe the most iconic King property. And some people may disagree with me there, obviously, with how much Pennywise killed at the box office and stuff like that, but at least as far as, people being familiar with the story, this is the most adapted and sequelized, as I said, Stephen King story ever. There's been 10 Children of the Corn films. 10 of them! That easily beats out, there were 3 Mangler movies, there were 3 Sometimes They Come Backs. They've done Carrie, they did Carrie, they did the Carrie 2, they did, they did the remake of Carrie on TV, they did, obviously, the remake with the Hit Girl, they did as far as adaptations go on the screen, Children of the Corn easily is way out in front of everybody else. The sequels are all terrible, And just to give the basic premise, if you guys are unfamiliar with it, there is a couple, 70s, they're driving through Nebraska, and it's interesting because Nebraska is the only state really besides Maine where King has kind of like a little mini universe of sorts, because you've got Hemingford Home, which is basically where they get Mother Abigail in The Stand. Hemingford Home is also where another story here in this collection, The Last Rung on the Ladder, is based, and also 1922, which was so masterfully adapted with Thomas Jane on Netflix just last year. Definitely recommend that movie. But Hemingford Home is very close in proximity to Gatlin, and Gatlin is where Children of the Corn takes place. So this couple is driving through, and they're fighting the whole way. You know, you can tell it's a strained marriage of sorts that we're taking kind of a peek into. And all of a sudden, a kid darts in front of them, and they run him over. Yeah, the wife is hysterical. She's screaming at the husband until they find out, oh, this kid had his throat cut and he was on the run seemingly, but he was already about to die. So they don't feel quite as bad, and this is within the first few minutes of both the remake and the original film that had Linda Hamilton in it. And so yeah, they essentially end up going into the town of Gatlin, and they realize it's deserted, and there's all kinds of creepiness going on, and there is a religious cult of sorts that worships a presence called He Who Walks Behind the Rose. And yeah, it deals with themes of religious fanaticism. It's obviously inspired by Village of the Damned. Village of the Damned, I believe it is. Children of the Damned is an amazing Iron Maiden song. Children of the Damned! But yeah, it obviously drew some inspiration from Village of the Damned, you know, where all the kids had the white hair and everything. And King is all about doing his own take on stories that inspired him. I mean, for goodness sake, he wore his heart on his sleeve about how, you know, Salem's Lot was essentially his retelling of Dracula in a lot of ways, and he's done the same thing with various other stories of his. You know, it's basically his homage to a Lovecraft story, or to a Matheson story, or, you know, Robert Bloch, or, you know, whatever. But this story, obviously, it was a creepy enough concept of religiously charged little kids killing people to warrant all of those sequels, albeit most of them direct-to-video. I think the only one that went theatrical was The Final Sacrifice, and I still remember seeing commercials for Children of the Corn, The Final Sacrifice, when I was a kid. I had not seen the original, but I saw the commercial for that on TV when I was maybe 8 years old, 9, something like that. Scared the crap out of me. That's actually a pretty cheese story, in all honesty, and they just got cheesier and cheesier as you went into the urban harvests and all of these, you know, sequel after sequel after sequel, direct-to-video, direct-to-video, direct-to-video. There is a new one that is coming out this year called Runaway, which I was really hopeful for, but and I was hopeful because of the fact that while I enjoy the Children of the Corn from the 80s, you know, that had Hamilton in it that I mentioned, I really liked the sci-fi remake. I really enjoyed the sci-fi remake of Children of the Corn. And it's interesting comparing the two because of the fact that, without going into super spoilers or anything like that, they took a lot of liberties and kind of Hollywoodized the Children of the Corn with Hamilton in it. And the sci-fi one, which was actually written, produced, and directed by the same guy who produced the original Children of the Corn, he contacted Stephen King and he's like, let's make this more faithful to the short story. And King sent him like a cease and desist letter, like, nope, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And so he still had the film rights though, so he proceeded to proceed along with it anyway, and that's yeah, that's basically where we ended up with the sci-fi version. Now, I know they had to cut out some of the violence, and one particular scene that's much more graphic, like sex and nudity-wise, than I think was really warrantable for Children of the Corn. But you know, hey, it's in the movie, at least in the DVD and the Blu-ray release. It's uncut and uncensored on the home releases that I mentioned, and I really dig the sci-fi remake. It's not without its problems. To compare the two without being super spoilery, I think the children are much creepier in the original version of the film. That is one thing that they did not succeed with in the remake of Children of the Corn. They also went a little too pretty boy with the Malachi character. And let's be honest, he's like a Abercrombie, like, you know, stud, as opposed to this creepy ginger, yeah, soulless Outlander that they spoofed so wonderfully on South Park. Where have your woman, Outlander? That is a great great South Park, by the way, where all the kids have taken over. I believe it's they molested me, yeah, and they get all their parents sent away because they say their parents molested them, and so they're all worshiping the John Elway statue. It's so good, man. That is one of my that's one of my favorite South Parks ever. It's tremendous, so good. But the areas where not the miniseries, because it wasn't a miniseries, it was a TV film. The areas where the TV film succeeded, though, was I enjoyed the performances of the two leads. Now, I know the girl who played Dee on Battlestar Galactica, a lot of people, especially my buddy Jason from Sinister Cinema Reviews, he basically was like, I hated this girl's character. But that's the way she was written, dude. That's the thing you have to keep in mind. Especially in the short story, she's a bitch. She is just whiny, complaining, and also she acts hysterical, and she's not the main character in it. That's the one thing that they kind of flipped around in the Linda Hamilton original Children of the Corn film, is that, you know, they toned her character down significantly, turned her much more into a hero and stuff. Also, the ending of this is much more faithful to the book, which is a double-edged sword. I love the fact that in the TV remake, they went for the actual ending of the short story, which is pretty crazy. However, they did an interesting thing with the ending as far as just going their own way with it in the original Linda Hamilton film. The dynamic between Malachi and and Isaac, you know, it's much more sinister and crazy what goes down in the ending of the original film, but in a different way, you know? So yeah, Isaac and Malachi way creepier in the original film, but you know, I liked the acting of I believe his name is he was in Heroes. It's not David Ayer. Oh, goodness gracious, David Anders? Nonetheless, he's on iZombie right now. He was on Heroes. He was on Alias. You guys will totally recognize him. He does a damn good job in the remake of the film, and it's interesting how they set it in the 70s like the original short story was, and they actually, the one change that I think is really cool that they make, or it's not so much a change, it's just like an addition of information, as you find out he's a Vietnam veteran, and yeah, the Dee from Battlestar is just giving him so much crap about it, and she's just poking and prodding, and she really, you don't like her character. You're not supposed to, like I said, and you know, he does a hell of a job with the parallels that they make of him going through the rows of the corn compared with being in the jungle in Nam, and also a lot of kids get killed in the remake of Children of the Corn. And I don't think any, well, there is some adult death without spoiling anything. But yeah, it's, I feel like I enjoy both films for different reasons. So I honestly don't recommend watching any of the Children of the Corn sequels. However, I do recommend watching the original film from the 80s, and I also recommend watching the sci-fi remake. I think they're both good for different reasons. So, but obviously, more so and more importantly than anything else, you have to read the short story. The short story is really where it's at. It's awesome. It was published in Penthouse. King, you know, getting into the more high-profile men's magazines, as I think I touched briefly on during the last episode, because he also published The Ledge in Penthouse. And so, yeah, guys, that's pretty much the extent of it. Oh, and you know what? There is also floating around on YouTube the original adaptation that I believe is a $1 baby. It's called Disciples of the Crow, and that is on YouTube as well. I haven't watched it yet, though. I remember maybe watching it many years ago when I first discovered it, but I'll be dead honest, I don't remember. I do not remember. Remember Children of Corn? I remember. Yeah, I remember it, but I do not. I don't really recall very many aspects of it. It was one that I wanted to rewatch before doing this video, but yeah, deadlines came, and all that I had the opportunity to rewatch was the sci-fi remake, and I still really like it. So once again, that is us coming to a close here on Hail to Stephen King, and we have just one episode left, guys, and that is going to encompass the final 4 stories, the 5th and final entry here of our night shift coverage, and that is going to be the last rung on the ladder. It's going to be The Man Who Loved Flowers, which I actually saw adapted into a $1 million baby, into a $1 baby just last year at the International Horror Sci-Fi Film Festival. It's going to also have One for the Road, which is the epilogue to Salem's Lot, and that was actually done as a short film that had Reggie Bannister in it, yeah, from the Phantasm series. Unfortunately, it's not available online. I actually made contact with the guy who made the film. He's an Irish filmmaker, and he was unable to release it. I'm not sure if it was legal rights or whatever, but he did send me a private link to it, and I did get to watch it, and it was fun. It was pretty good. One for the Road is an interesting little vampire story, and kind of ties up a few loose ends about Salem's Lot and, you know, the town of Jerusalem's Lot. And then lastly, we have The Woman in the Room, which, if I'm not mistaken, was done as a dollar baby by Frank Darabont. That was how he initially got Stephen King's attention before he went on to do Shawshank, The Green Mile, and The Mist, all three oh so masterfully. So you guys have that to look forward to. I hope that if you are watching this video far later than when it was initially published, you're actually going through and reading these and then jumping on to give your thoughts about these short stories. I have been Jaime and Fuego. You all can find me in social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. New content coming this weekend for the Oscars. Yes, I'm going to be doing some discussions about my favorite films of last year and also the Best Picture nominees. So obviously none of that is scary stuff, but that I need an outlet to kind of just allow myself to breathe sometimes. And when it's just an onslaught of the scarific constantly, I mean, you need a little ebb and flow, right? So even though I've read every Stephen King book, Stephen King is not the only author that I read, guys. So, but he's my favorite author. That's the purpose of this video. Like, share, and subscribe here on The Horror Show if you have not done so already. And if you share the video, please do it on your respective social medias with the #Tizzle Hail to Stephen King, title of the episode, as I mentioned. Once the final coverage of Night Shift is over, we're going to be shifting back to your regularly scheduled program of sorts, and I look forward to all of the different things that we're going to be covering here in the coming weeks and months here on The Horror Show for Hail to Stephen King. So until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, constant viewers. I love all of you, and until we meet once again, remember, stay scared and read Stephen King, especially Children of the Corn. It's worth the hype.